My name's Nate, and I'm 34 years old. If you asked anyone who knew me a few months ago, they would have said I was a pretty lucky guy. Good job at a mid-sized tech company, a nice house in a quiet suburb, married to a beautiful woman named Claire who everyone said was way out of my league. We'd been together 6 years, married for 3. From the outside looking in, it all seemed pretty perfect. And honestly, for a while, I believed it too. Until one night, everything cracked, and I realized just how deep the betrayal ran. It all started a few weeks before my company was announcing internal promotions. I'd been quietly working my tail off for the last year, pulling overtime, mentoring new hires, managing projects that should have been split between 3 people. Claire knew how badly I wanted that director title. It wasn't just about the money, though. Yeah, it was a nice bonus. It was the recognition, the stability, the sense that all the late nights and missed weekends actually meant something. Claire had been supportive, at least on the surface. Lots of back rubs when I came home late. Big dinners to celebrate in advance. Little comments to her friends about finally making it. So when Claire suggested hosting her family for a big dinner a week before the announcements, I didn't even blink. I figured it would be good karma. Show everyone how grounded we were, how strong our little empire was. I even volunteered to do most of the prep. Clean the house, set the table, picked up the drink and the fancy cheeses her dad liked. Anything to make it perfect. That night, I was downstairs in the dining room setting up. The long oak table, polished so hard it practically blinded you when the overhead light hit it, was half done. Cloth napkins folded into those weird little fan shapes, polished forks glinting, candles already flickering softly. Claire's parents and her younger sister were due any minute. Claire was upstairs, putting on the finishing touches, which really just meant stressing over her hair in the mirror like she always did when her mom was involved. I realized I'd forgotten the dessert plates, so I jogged upstairs to the linen closet by our bedroom to grab them. That's when I heard it. Voices, low and urgent, just around the corner in the master bedroom. Our door was cracked open. They hadn't even bothered to close it all the way. I paused automatically, plate still in hand, not even trying to eavesdrop at first. But the words slipped out, sharp and heavy, and once I heard them, I couldn't pretend I hadn't. "He's just a stepping stone," Claire's mom whispered, her voice tight with disgust. "You deserve so much better." Claire laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not a come on, be nice kind of laugh. A full, genuine, conniving laugh. "Don't worry," she said, voice dripping with smug confidence. "Once the promotion goes through, I'm gone, with a nice chunk of his money too." I stood there, frozen. It felt like the floor shifted underneath me, like gravity twisted sideways, and I couldn't tell which way was up anymore. Part of me wanted to burst in right then, slam the plates on the floor, scream, "How could you?" Another part, the smarter part, told me to stay quiet, to act normal, to listen, to wait. I turned around slowly, carefully, and walked back downstairs. Every step felt like walking through molasses. My brain raced. Had this been going on for months? Years? Was our whole marriage a lie? How much of my life had I handed over to someone who saw me as nothing more than a paycheck with a pulse? By the time Claire and her family floated downstairs, laughing and complimenting the house and patting me on the back like I was a trained dog, I had plastered on the perfect smile. I poured drinks. I joked with her father about the football game last weekend. I complimented her sister's new haircut. Claire looked at me a few times, a little puzzled, like she could sense something was different. But I never faltered. Not once. Inside, though, I was burning. Over the next few days, I pretended everything was fine. I kissed Claire goodnight. I packed her lunch for work. I sent her stupid memes during the day like we always did. Meanwhile, every spare minute I had was spent gathering information, account statements, property deeds, retirement plans. Anything and everything tied to my name that she could possibly try to leech off of when she made her grand exit. I also made a quiet appointment with a lawyer. A good one. Someone I found through a friend who'd gone through a messy divorce and still managed to come out on top. I laid out the situation, piece by piece, careful not to let my anger color the facts too much. The lawyer listened, took notes, then leaned back in her chair and said, with a small smile, "You're in a much better position than you think." Those words stuck with me over the next few days like a mantra. Every time Claire snuggled up next to me on the couch or asked if I wanted to celebrate early for the promotion, I heard them. "You're in a much better position than you think." Finally, the day came. Promotion announcements. I got the title, the big corner office, the pay bump, the congratulatory email that went out to the whole company. Claire was ecstatic, or at least she pretended to be. She popped champagne in the kitchen. She posted a carefully worded Instagram story about how hard work pays off, with a blurry picture of us clinking glasses. And me? I smiled. I toasted. I kissed her forehead and said, "Here's to new beginnings." The next morning, I left for work early. Claire was still asleep, tangled in our expensive white sheets, completely unaware of the tidal wave that was about to hit her. It didn't take long. 3 days later, my phone lit up with the first message. Then another, and another. Before long, it was buzzing nonstop, my screen practically overheating from the flood of texts and missed calls. Claire texted, "Nate? What's going on with the accounts? Why can't I access the savings? Where are you?" Her mom texted, "This isn't funny, Nate. Grow up and fix this." Claire texted again, "Nate, please answer. We need to talk. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I was just stressed. Please come home." I sat in my new office, the city skyline stretching out beyond my window, and just watched the messages roll in, one after another, each more desperate than the last. But I didn't respond. I just smiled, leaned back in my chair, and waited. They had no idea that 3 days ago, while Claire was busy popping champagne and dreaming up her new single and wealthy life, I had already set everything into motion. The new promotion gave me the perfect excuse to shift things around. Legally, of course. My direct deposit information was updated to a completely separate account under my name only. Every shared asset that wasn't nailed down had been quietly disentangled over the past few days. The house. We never refinanced it after the wedding like Claire had wanted. It was still solely under my name. The car Claire drove? Leased under my company's name. Technically not even personal property. The chunk of my money she thought she could run away with? Locked up in accounts she legally couldn't touch without my authorization, which she would never get. But the real cherry on top was the prenup she forgot she signed. Back when we got engaged, I suggested it almost offhandedly, just a casual conversation over coffee after a friend's messy breakup. Claire had rolled her eyes, called me paranoid, but eventually signed it with a dramatic huff, waving it off as unnecessary. "It's not like we'll ever need it," she'd said. Funny how things change. I kept scrolling through her messages, reading every frantic paragraph. At first, they were angry, demanding, blaming me for embarrassing her, for making a scene, even though I hadn't even done anything yet. But then they shifted. The anger melted into panic, regret, begging, apologies that felt about as sincere as a snake oil salesman's promises. My favorite one was short. Just 3 words, "Please come home." I didn't. Instead, I went home that night, long after dark, when I knew she wouldn't be there. I needed to grab a few essentials, documents from my safe, some clothes, my old photo albums that I didn't trust her not to accidentally ruin once she realized how thoroughly she'd burned her bridges. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Claire's car was gone. Good. I wanted her to feel the empty silence when she came back. Inside, the house was pristine. Too pristine. Claire must have spent the day spiraling, trying to clean, organize, make everything look perfect again, as if a neat house could cover the mess she'd made. I moved through the rooms quickly, methodically. Safe first, then my personal files. My dad's old watch, tucked in the back of the closet. A few framed photos off the mantel. I was almost done when I noticed something strange in the kitchen. Claire's laptop, open on the counter, screen glowing. Curiosity got the better of me. I walked over and glanced at the open tabs. Emails, text drafts, messages to friends. She wasn't planning to leave quietly, not anymore. She was scrambling to rally sympathy, crafting a story where I was the villain, cold, distant, emotionally abusive, painting herself as the innocent, the wronged wife who tried everything to save our marriage. I shouldn't have been surprised, but reading it still twisted something inside me. Before I left, I grabbed a sticky note from the drawer, scribbled 2 words, and stuck it to her laptop screen. "Checkmate, Claire." Then I locked the door behind me. The next day, the real fireworks started. Claire showed up at my office mid-morning, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Makeup smeared, hair tangled, the carefully curated, perfect wife image completely shattered. She stormed past the receptionist, ignoring the protests, and slammed open the door to my office. "Nate," she gasped, voice hoarse. "Please, we can fix this. Just talk to me." I stood up slowly, smoothing the front of my jacket, and looked at her like a stranger. Because that's what she was now. A stranger who thought she could build a life on lies and greed and not pay the price for it. "I don't think there's anything left to fix," I said quietly. Tears welled up in her eyes. Real ones, maybe, but they didn't move me. Not anymore. "Don't do this," she whispered. "Please." I was just scared. I didn't mean any of it. I leaned against the edge of my desk, arms crossed. I didn't yell. I didn't call her names. I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me angry. I just spoke calmly, each word slicing through the room like a scalpel. "You meant every word, Claire. And now, you get to live with it." Security showed up a few minutes later. I didn't have to call them. The receptionist already had. They stood awkwardly by the door, clearly not wanting to escalate unless I gave the signal. I didn't have to. Claire looked at them, then at me, then back at them. Something in her finally broke. She turned and fled, heels clacking frantically against the tile. I sat back down at my desk, feeling lighter than I had in months. Later that night, my lawyer called. Claire's attorney, apparently hastily hired in her panic, had tried to contest the prenup. Tried being the key word. It was airtight, ironclad. She'd signed away any claim to my future earnings, my property, and even the house she'd once smugly picked out as our forever home. Now, it was just mine. And Claire? Claire was left with nothing but the consequences of her own choices. I poured myself a drink, leaned back on the couch in my new, blissfully quiet apartment, and waited for the next move. Because something told me Claire and her charming, scheming mother weren't done yet. Not by a long shot. The next few days passed in a strange, heavy kind of silence. Not uncomfortable exactly. Not for me. But dense, like the final few moments before a thunderstorm breaks. Every morning, I half expected to see Claire parked outside my building, waiting to plead her case one more time. Every evening, I expected some kind of desperate stunt, a chance encounter at the grocery store, a handwritten letter on my doorstep, something messy. But it didn't come. Not immediately, anyway. Instead, she went quiet. Which, honestly, made me more nervous than if she'd thrown a full-blown tantrum. I knew Claire well enough to know she wasn't the type to walk away without trying something. The first real crack appeared about a week later. I got a call from HR, a woman named Sandra who normally only spoke to me for official paperwork and awkward birthday card signings. "Hey, Nate," she said, voice low, almost apologetic. "Just a heads up, we got a strange email from someone claiming to be your concerned neighbor. Said you've been emotionally unstable lately and might be misusing company resources. Total nonsense, obviously, but thought you should know." I closed my eyes, rubbing the bridge of my nose. Let me guess. No name. No real details. Exactly. "We're not taking it seriously," Sandra added quickly. "Honestly, it sounds like personal drama, but I figured you'd want to be aware." I thanked her and hung up, feeling that familiar cold knot twist in my stomach. Claire wasn't trying to fight me in court. She wasn't trying to reason with me anymore. She was trying to ruin me. Smear my name. Torch my career. The one thing she hadn't managed to sink her claws into before I cut her off. Part of me wanted to march straight to her apartment, or her mother's smug little McMansion, and call them out, right there in the driveway. But another part, the part that had been humiliated, lied to, played like a fool for years, knew better. They wanted me angry. They wanted me impulsive. They wanted me to give them ammo. Instead, I played it cool. I called my lawyer again that afternoon and gave her the full update. She listened patiently, then gave a small, dangerous laugh. "They're grasping at straws," she said. "If they had anything real, they'd have used it already. This is just noise. Let them make fools of themselves." Still, I tightened things up even further. Locked down my social media. Warned my friends and coworkers not to believe anything shady they might hear. Even spoke to my boss, who thankfully was a good man with a sharp nose for bull. "Don't worry, Nate," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "I've seen this before. They always overplay their hand." And oh, did they? Because a few days later, just when I thought maybe, the worst was behind me, the real storm hit. It was a Saturday morning. I was just finishing my run through the neighborhood, earbuds in, mind blissfully blank for the first time in weeks. I rounded the corner toward my apartment complex, already picturing the hot shower and coffee waiting for me, when I noticed a cluster of people standing near the entrance. Neighbors, some whispering, some openly staring, a few kids craning their necks, phones out, recording. My stomach dropped, and then I saw it. Claire, standing dead center in the parking lot, sobbing dramatically, clothes rumpled, hair wild, makeup streaked down her cheeks. In her hands, she clutched a handful of framed photos, wedding photos, candid shots from vacations, even one from the night I proposed. And around her, scattered all over the asphalt, all my old clothes, my college hoodie, a few ratty t-shirts, even an old pair of sneakers. It looked like she'd raided some forgotten storage box and thrown a full-blown Hallmark breakup scene for the entire world to see. When she spotted me, her face lit up, this twisted mix of triumph and desperation. "There you are," she cried, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "You can't just throw me away. We're married. You owe me." I slowed to a walk, heart hammering, sweat cooling on my skin. For a second, just a second, I actually pitied her, watching her flail, watching her destroy what little dignity she had left. But then I remembered. I remembered the sound of her laughter upstairs, the night she promised to gut me the second she had what she wanted. And the pity turned to something colder. I pulled out my phone, calmly, slowly, made sure everyone could see, and I started recording. Claire's face paled. She stumbled toward me, still clutching the frames, voice shaking. "Nate, please, we can fix this, I swear." I cut her off. "Claire," I said, voice low even. "You need to leave. Now. But this is harassment. I'm giving you one chance to walk away before I call the cops." For a second, she stood there, breathing hard, eyes wild, weighing her options. Then, finally, she dropped the photos, glass shattering across the pavement, and bolted, jumped into her car, and tore out of the lot, tires screeching. I ended the recording and turned to the small crowd. "Sorry for the scene," I said dryly. "Crazy X." A few people chuckled awkwardly. A few patted me on the back. Most just looked relieved it was over. But I knew it wasn't. Not really. I didn't wait for Claire to pull something else. As soon as I got upstairs, I emailed the video footage to my lawyer, my building manager, and the local police department's non-emergency line. I wasn't playing defense anymore. Claire had crossed a line, harassing me publicly, trying to tarnish my name. I was done waiting for her to calm down or magically realize the mess she'd made. Within 24 hours, I had a restraining order filed and granted. The video helped. So did the very public witness statements from my neighbors. Apparently, one of them, a retired police officer, had even called the incident in himself without my asking. Another neighbor sent me her own footage from a different angle. It was messy, humiliating, undeniable. I slept better that night than I had in months. Of course, Claire being Claire, she didn't take the order seriously. She texted me the next day, pretending nothing had happened, asking if we could talk like adults. When I didn't respond, she escalated, tried calling from different numbers, emailing from burner accounts. Every message became more desperate, more unhinged. Screenshots flew into a folder I kept labeled for court, and with every message, I felt more and more detached from her. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was revulsion. The woman I had loved or thought I loved wasn't real. She never was. She was a carefully crafted lie. A performance tailored to what she thought I wanted until she thought she could do better. And when she couldn't, when the gold at the end of her rainbow dried up, she imploded. It was ugly, but it was freeing too. About a week after the parking lot stunt, Claire's mother showed up at my office. She must have figured if Claire's dramatics hadn't worked, it was time for the concerned parent play. My boss, already fully briefed and extremely tired of their antics, had security escort her out before she even made it to my floor. She still managed to slip a letter under the door, handwritten, thick with the smell of cheap perfume, laced with thinly veiled threats about doing what's right for the family and restoring Claire's dignity. It went straight into the evidence folder. A few days later, I got word through my lawyer. Claire was officially trying to contest the prenup. Again. This time, they were arguing emotional distress, coercion, whatever buzzword they thought would stick. It didn't matter. Every claim they made crumbled under even the slightest legal pressure. My lawyer, a soft-spoken woman in her late 40s, barely broke a sweat dismantling every pathetic argument they threw at us. When the judge finally ruled on it, he didn't even blink. Prenup upheld. Claire got nothing. No house. No savings. No chunk of my money. Not even alimony. The prenup had explicitly outlined financial independence, and given how short our marriage was and the total lack of children, the court had no reason to question it. She left the courtroom sobbing, makeup streaked down her cheeks again, just like in the parking lot. Her mother glared at me over her shoulder, as if this was somehow my fault. I stood there, cool and composed, and didn't say a single word. It was over. Really, truly over. The final nail in the coffin came 2 weeks later when I got a call from a mutual friend, someone who hadn't chosen sides but had kept me loosely informed from a distance. Apparently, Claire had moved back in with her parents, forced to sleep in her childhood bedroom while her mother plotted new schemes. Word was, she tried dating again, fishing for another upgrade, but the story of her meltdown had traveled fast, especially after she made the mistake of bad-mouthing me to people who already knew the truth. No one wanted to touch that drama bomb with a 10-foot pole. The last thing I heard, she was working part-time at a boutique downtown, under the thumb of an overbearing manager who treated her the same way she used to treat me, like she was disposable, like her worth was entirely tied to what she could offer someone else. There was a certain grim poetry to it, but I didn't dwell on it. Instead, I focused on rebuilding. I found a new apartment, smaller, quieter, mine. I started taking trips again, short, spontaneous ones, just because I could. I bought a dog, a big goofy golden retriever named Max who didn't care about titles or bank accounts, just belly rubs and long walks, and who could throw a tennis ball the farthest. I reconnected with old friends, made new ones, built a life that wasn't about impressing anyone. And slowly, the anger faded. The sadness too. All that was left was clarity. And gratitude. Gratitude that I caught her when I did. Gratitude that I didn't marry deeper into the lie. Gratitude that I hadn't let her betrayal destroy the better parts of me. Looking back now, it almost feels like another lifetime. Another person, another world. Every once in a while, though, usually late at night, when the city's gone quiet and Max is curled up snoring against my leg, I think about that night. The candles flickering on the dining room table. The polished forks. The laughter drifting down the stairs. The sound of Claire's voice, so casual, so cruel. "Don't worry," she'd said. "Once the promotion goes through, I'm gone with a nice chunk of his money too." I smile when I think about it now. Because in the end, Claire was right about one thing. There was a promotion. There was a new beginning. There was a life waiting on the other side of all of it. It just didn't include her. And thank God for that. Max shifts in his sleep, letting out a deep, content sigh. I reach down and scratch behind his ears, feeling the simple, steady rhythm of the life I've built back from the ashes. No drama. No lies. No stepping stones. Just peace. Finally. And as I close my eyes, I realize something. Maybe getting burned was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because some bridges aren't meant to be crossed. Some bridges are meant to be burned to the ground. And some people never deserve to make the journey with you in the first place.